We begin now. Well, hello everyone. Tonight is a great night. I've got a special guest with me, and this guest here was here a few years back. I would say just a couple actually. And I'm just going to cut to the chase. Tonight is financial sorcery. Everyone's concerned about it. Everyone needs that money. Everyone, you looking at the interview, you looking at this interview right now, you looking and you having a computer is all about finances. It's something that, you really cannot avoid talking about. So let's talk about it right now and welcome my guest, Jason Miller. Hello, Jason. How are you? It's been a while.
It has, Mona. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I looked at your book. I read your book over and over again. I loved it. I love the first one. I love this one. And I've got it with me right here, everyone. Financial Sorcery. It's a great book. Loads of information. But I wanted to ask you, it was really, really on my mind. What brought you to actually write this book?
Well, I try to write books that cover something that I think hasn't been done well or has only been done in outdated versions and things like that. So with Protection and Reversal Magic, I thought I had something to say that was different or at least updated from, say, Dion Fortune or something like that.
Yes.
Topic was in need of an update. With financial sorcery, there's a lot of information on the market as far as money spells, as far as doing magic to get a sum of money. Now, this usually falls into one or two camps. You're either trying to fix an emergency that's come up. Oh my God, my mortgage is due and I don't have any money. Quick, let me summon some quick cash because I don't really like to think about money. Or it falls into the other camp of trying to win the lottery, millions and millions and millions of dollars, so you never have to think about money again. So financial sorcery takes a different tactic. Financial sorcery assumes that you are going to deal with money throughout your life, that there is no avoiding it, and it is best, unless you're in a monastery or work, a homeless wandering yogi, it's best to bring it on the path rather than only deal with it in emergencies or attempt to get some huge lottery win so you never have to think about it. Financial sorcery assumes that you like money, that you think it's a good thing to have and that you can do good things with it, and that you want to use it to build your life, make your life better and the lives of others. So financial sorcery takes that tactic. So it's one of the first books that incorporates magic into a full financial plan for really anyone at any stage.
Well, you know that people who practice the occult, people who practice areas of magic, are always divided upon the actual business aspect of it and the spirituality aspect of it. So how do you marry the two? How have you really managed to marry the two within your book?
Well, within the book, first of all, I talk about how to approach money as a spiritual power or as a spiritual force, just like anything else. So there's a whole chapter of money as spirit, and what the qualities of money itself are, and it's very much like a spirit. I think Peter Carroll had pointed out that money is this ephemeral thing presented by actual legal tender. It's almost like a sigil for what money is, and that money has qualities. It doesn't like to be wasted. It likes to move, and so on and so forth. And then in the book, I talk about, mostly the book is about building wealth at different stages of your life and how to address problems like not having a job or not having a retirement plan and things like that. But it becomes part of the spiritual path because your life is a spiritual path. So it becomes part of that. You can't really divorce it. if you're going to have a job, if you're going to not be a monk or a wandering yogi, money is going to be a big part of your existence. So, however you handle it, you have to master it. You have to keep it in line with your values, and use it thusly. So, that's the answer in the book.
I see. Well, when I was reading the book, what I found is you actually combining lots of elements of life to really manage your money, such as the psyche, putting yourself in the right mindset, and actually applying the application of doing. Such as making sure that your resume or your CV is together. Make sure you actually actively do something, which many people actually just throw the sigils out in the ether. Light some incense. Really dedicate to whatever entity, and voila, it's supposed to appear. So you give a practical and more tactical way of actually applying the residuals of that financial sorcery event of a ritual.
Well, since writing the book, I have had dozens of clients seeking, say, job finding magic, and then other people that just write to me for advice that I don't charge anything for. And very often I'll say, well, I used to ask, well, what do you do for a living? What kind of job are you looking for? Now I say, send me your resume. Let me take a look, because that'll answer that question right away. And it's, you'll have people write and they'll say, well, I summoned Boone in a full 9-foot circle, exactly as it's written, and then I did candle magic exactly as Lady Rhea told me to, and my friend got a job and I didn't. And I'll be like, well, your resume stinks. It's terrible. I mean, this is awful. It looks like a 16-year-old did it. But that shouldn't matter. Well, of course it matters. You're anything that your magic has to work against to overcome is a strike against it. So, I mean, if you're trying to do magic to find a significant other, but you refuse to leave your house, or you dress like, you're a complete bum, or some like 70s pickup artist or something like that, it's a huge turnoff. Your magic is not going to be able to overcome that because your actions are counteractive. And people sort of know that, yet because we have this idea of money and finances and in some people's minds even like a decent paying job as being antithetical to spiritual practice, they don't think that way. They think, well, I did a money spell. I should be getting a job. I should be... It's like, well, no, you're a 34-year-old dressing like a teenager and handing in a resume that looks like they wouldn't hire you at the gas station. So, yeah, you need to work on that. Your magic's fine. So, the book, a good part of it is that kind of thing. It's the ins and outs of retirement, the ins and outs of finding a job, the ins and outs of getting out of debt. Because unless you have that knowledge to hang your magic on, you'll never get anywhere.
I see. Well, when you mention financial sorcery, for those of you who haven't read the book, it gives practical information as well as, I would say, bespoke information within the arts to apply, I guess, success. But it also depends on that individual, as you just mentioned. What I'd like to move over to, though, is the actual magic aspect of it, because when you mention sorcery, people sort of they lean towards thinking that it's a little higher than the average magic. It's a little bit more mysterious and very secretive. So when you chose the word sorcery, were you trying to actually have a volume after the last one that you had, or would you define your method of magic through sorcery?
Well, I try not to get too hard and fast about the definitions of magic. I came up, you know, in the 80s when sort of everybody was interested in everything. The Wiccan priestesses I knew were also fully conversant in ceremonial magic and were interested in it. And the ceremonial magicians I knew were interested in candle magic and hedge magic and oils and things like this. So that was sort of the scene that I came up with in. But now it's very fractured. People are, you're this or you're that. And that's not how I operated. You know, from the time I was a teenager, I had a ceremonial magic. I hesitate to call her a teacher, but she was there to help mentor me and steer me in the right direction in my own studies. Let's put it that way. But I also had somebody at the local conjure shop showing me how they use oils and things like that. So I've been always employing these two together. So sorcery, the word sorcery came about basically because it's underdefined. It's not used that often. It can bridge the gap between witchcraft and hedge magic and conjure and ceremonial magic. And also it employs... The idea of the sorcerer is someone who is doing something very practical. These days, a witch can be someone, and rightly so, someone who believes certain things and celebrates certain holidays, but perhaps does no magic in the practical sense of spells and things like that at all. And that's perfectly okay. I think for paganism to grow and for Wicca to grow, that those people need to be embraced by the community as a whole. Similarly, there are people in the ceremonial magic community who do no practical operative magic. They do meditations on the Sephira and the paths of the Tree of Life, and they attune themselves this way. And I belong to a group who does just that kind of thing. And that's also awesome and great. But sorcery, to call someone a sorcerer, it implies getting your hands dirty. You're out there, you're doing things, you're moving the game pieces with your magic and with your actions. You're not just worshiping deities, and you're not just sort of in the temple communing with the powers that be. You're taking that gnosis, that illumination, and letting those rays shine outward through your acts. And that's what magic and sorcery are to me. So that's why I chose the word sorcery.
Well, it actually works very well, because I thought to myself, I thought it was rather clever of you to actually do that, because it just, it goes perfectly. In your book, I noticed that you have given lots of different examples to really a person helping themselves. Can you give a couple examples of, not to give too much away, but a couple examples as to how people can actually, be above sea level financially? Because of course it's paying your bills, it's making sure you don't buy the designer things and really not living above your means. But sometimes many people complain, even to me, that no matter what they do, they hit rock bottom, with at least financially.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that is it's a really simple equation, and the equation can fail no matter how much money you make. People think it's all about making more or being rich or spending less and being thrifty. But really, the world is filled with people that make maybe not minimum wage, but make a very modest income, yet manage to stay above water and live their whole life financially stable way. And of course, it's also filled with rock stars that completely, they're making millions and millions of dollars and they lose everything. And, at one time, VH1, I think, was a channel purely dedicated to 80s rock stars that had lost everything. So, it's really just a simple equation of this is your pile of money coming in, this is your pile of money going out. Make sure this pile is bigger than this pile, and you're okay. If it's not, then you're not okay. And so that's the biggest thing. Now, there are some tricks to doing this. The first of all, of course, is to make sure that you live below your means, live at your means, not above them.
Yeah, right.
So you do want to check your spending, but I'm not a big spending focused person. I think that a lot of people get caught up in money management, cut out the lattes and stop buying this and that. And, it doesn't really amount to much. And then you get some people that get really, really extreme. They're making their own toothpaste and stuff like this to save money. And it doesn't really save very much money because you can only cut so much.
Right.
You have to be able to make more. So the obvious ways to make more are to, improve your training, become a more desirable employee to get a better position. But there are other ways. We live in the age of the internet. We're doing this. I'm talking to you through a phone. You're talking to me through a computer. We both run, internet businesses, essentially. Businesses that can be started for a very small investment compared to what it would take to start a business 20 years ago, where you would need to take out a loan and have an office and this kind of thing. So, developing a secondary income stream is really very easy nowadays. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't work, then, you're out a few $100s. You're not going completely bankrupt unless you're, doing something brick and mortar wise. Other tricks, people have this thing with Magick about they only are able to conjure what they need. And this is actually something that's not in the book because it's something I thought about after writing the book. So maybe it'll be in Financial Sorcery too. But I call this the need fallacy. And basically, people write to me all the time and say, I'm always able to conjure money, but it's always just enough of what I need, just enough to cover the bills. And I think a lot of this is psychological. We have this thing in our heads of the bills, the nut that we have to cover. And then we have this thing, and it sort of just happens outside of our mentality. It is what it is. And then we have this other stuff that's the stuff we spend money on, that we have, we spend it and enjoy it as we're doing it. So there's a trick that I've learned, and that is to take things that you spend on and shift them over to the bill pile. The biggest thing for this is investing. People talk like, I would love to invest, but how could I ever invest money? I never have spare money to invest, and I could never conjure money just to invest. It's easy. You tell your company, I would bet 90% of the people watching this have direct deposit these days. Their job deposits it right into their bank account. Most companies, you can have them deposit it, split the deposit. So you can have 20% or 10% or whatever you can afford to go into a separate online high-yield savings account. Then have your investment company or your brokerage house or whatever deduct money per month from that online account, which is separate from other things. And it's all automatic. You don't think about it. And all of a sudden it becomes part of the nut that gets covered under the need. It falls under bills, just like your Easy Pass or your Netflix or something like that. Once it's automatic, you don't think about it. It just becomes the thing that you automatically do. So if you can take those kinds of things and make them things that you automatically do, you'll find that the money is always there for them somehow.
I believe that's very practical, and it's funny enough. That's exactly how I feel because my overhead is always into my budget because that's what I my maintenance is what I actually spend my money on. So aside from bills, so it only makes sense to me. But that's very practical. How does that relate to the mindset of a person who does magic every day though? Because many people will say, well, that's that. I only want to care about magic. But see, I know and you know that it's the mind that matters. It's the intent, it's the mindset. And if your mind isn't there and your actions aren't there, I don't know what's going to actually get you what you want. But then of course there's that ritual, there's that sigil, there's that circle, there's that deity that you engage with, most likely evoking. How do you put that two together? Because that's what lots of people are anticipating, and what I'm afraid of, and I don't want people to sway, and to get confused. But what I'm afraid of is that people will say, "Well, magic doesn't work. It's I just have to do the right thing with my account management. My money. So it's about both of them. But how would you find people? How would you help people to merge the two? Because spirituality and finance is so hard to marry each other. I mean, it's so hard. It's a relationship that many spiritual people have had a hard time doing, and that's why so many of them are starving artists, so to speak.
Well, it's something that we make hard mostly for ourselves, though, because we view money as being unspiritual. And, the reality is it's not unspiritual.
Right.
It's not anything in and of itself. It's not good, bad, or indifferent. I think left outside of the realm of spirituality, then yes, money can become a very big problem. And I think that the world is suffering a lot today because money has been completely divorced from the idea of spirituality, or really from any kind of ethics or morality at all outside of making more of it. And it becomes this idea of, well, we'll make more if we do this. And there's no spiritual element to it whatsoever. So I think it's in the 1960s and sort of the hippie movement and things like this, magic and occultists and witchcraft and so on was sort of part and parcel to that anti-materialist kind of hippie culture.
Right.
And that's okay. It served the purpose that it did, and it stood apart from the mainstream for a reason. But at the same time, you can't fix the problems if you don't have the tools to fix the problems. And if you don't have the tools to fix the problems, then money is a tool to fix the problem, I guess is what I'm saying. So people need to think it through and not avoid the issue. If you're a spiritual person and you tend to think of, well, one cannot serve mammon and serve the Lord, for instance, is a really popular phrase in Christianity, and obviously a quote from the Bible, from the Gospel of Matthew. But think about the terms. One cannot serve money and serve the Lord. Now, what most people say is, okay, well, this indicates renunciation. Okay, fine. That's a valid path. If you're going to renounce money as a part of your spiritual path, then that's great. I know people that do that. I know monks and I know homeless wandering sadhus from when I lived in Nepal. But by and large, the people that I talk to in the occult and pagan community aren't doing that. They're working, at Walmart or at the local coffee shop, acting like they're not materialistic because they don't really care about their job or something. They're slacking is what we would call it in the 90s. And that's not renouncing, that is serving money. That is letting money walk all over you. So it's better if you can't serve something, if you can't renounce it, or you're just not set up to renounce it, then you have to master it. You have to say, well, I'm not a renunciate. I'm not a monk or a nun. I'm not a wandering yogi, and money therefore has a place in my life. So as a service to the gods, as a service to God, as a service to myself, as a service to the goddess, I'm going to bring money on the path and use it wisely and be guided by the spiritual disciplines. And even if you were a monk or a nun, it takes money to run monasteries. It takes, a good portion of their day is spent, doing chores and making things. There are, there's a Catholic monastery not that far from us, and there's a gift shop.
Yes.
So, it's there whether you want it to be or not. So you have to make it spiritual or you make it unspiritual. And if you take something in your life and make it unspiritual, then it's not going to be aligned with your spirituality, but automatically.
Right.
You can't let it run your spirituality. You can't become like some of these financial gospel people where, the whole show is about send me money for God, but there are excellent sources for this, for having money and using it in the spiritual way.
Well, speaking of that, and speaking of the marriage between spirituality and finance, what are some of the things that you can mention about, marrying the two together in reference to herbs, rituals, just things to do that people can actually resonate with? Some of the old money spells, or some of the things you've mentioned in your book, I do not want to give away. I do not want to say, but I just thought maybe you could give people just a little preview as to some of the things that they could possibly work with until they do read your book.
Well, one of the things in the book, magically speaking, that's got quite a lot of attention is the glyphs of Jupiter. And of sigils that were given by Jupiter, by the god, the Roman god Jupiter, who I had prayed to and was working with throughout the writing of the book, and I had my friend, partner, fellow sorcerer, and illustrator Matthew Brownlee came over, and we evoked the presence of Jupiter to reveal these things, because Jupiter had been telling me, I have this thing I want to show you, but you won't be able to put it down on paper. You need somebody else who can actually draw. So I had my friend Matthew come over, and these things appeared, some of them literally in the air as we were doing the invocation, and some of them in the eye of the mind. But these are extremely practical glyphs aimed at very specific things. For instance, viral marketing.
Yes.
Reversing bad luck, or not so much reversing bad luck, but using unfortunate circumstance to make a better circumstance. So in the case of, you're in a down market with housing, it's a terrible thing. Maybe you'll get a job as serving foreclosure notices, which is a terrible job to have, but still in all, it's a job. Or, perhaps if the market is down, you make some wise investments in stocks that are, not expensive at the time you buy them, and then later on you're able to sell them for high. Other glyphs like drawing money, getting promoted, establishing secondary income streams, things like this. So these glyphs have been used since before the book was published. We released them out to a few key people. And everyone from, I have one person was using the glyphs to help open up a bank account in another country to secure assets offshore. Another one was using the glyphs to advertise a show that he was in charge of, a theater production that he was in charge of. And they were all quite successful. So, you know, I still have field reports rolling in about people using the glyphs, and it's very rewarding in that sense.
Jason, that's incredible, because I've never had anyone on my show to say that they've done a case study before they've actually put the book together. But that's great, and I thought to actually show a couple of the glyphs, but I figured that it would probably glare off of the screen, so I'll see if I can actually put it up a little bit towards the end. But I don't also, too, want to give too much away, because there are some great things in here. You've got holding on to your money, finding a job, for drawing your money, for promotion, financial discipline, sweetening relations, in reference to money, of course. That's incredible. That's really incredible. You need to do also, too, Love Sorcery is your next book, probably. And let's see, I guess every topic under there you can actually include sorcery for. I'm quite sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever do a book on like love finding sorcery or something like that, but I might. It's certainly the number one thing that I get contacted for, as far as people that want practical work done, is they either want a lover returned, or they want to find someone to fall in love with them or something like that. But there's a lot of those jobs that I don't take. Love holds a special place in my mind that I don't like to get too zappy with, for lack of a better term. Not zapping this person and that person. Whereas, finances, I like to get very specific about it. What are you doing? When is it happening? Who's involved? What needs to happen? And, with love, while I have used Magick to bring myself a certain type of person, or to find someone, and indeed I did a Erzuli ritual back in the 90s and met my wife shortly thereafter. I don't do a lot of the love magic, but I might do a book on it. So, yeah. And I cover it more in depth in my strategic sorcery course. So I go into a little bit more in depth there.
Yes, that also, too, is something I'd like to talk about, because I do know that you do offer the course. And but before we go off into that, I wanted to ask you, in reference to the financial sorcery, is there a point in time where you would actually recommend that a person get a clue, and possibly it's not for them? And the reason why I mentioned the love is because love and money, they sort of remind me of each other sometimes. Either you can't get enough, or you've got too much, you don't know what to do with it, or something like that. So I was just wondering, reference to finance, there's that job. Maybe it's not meant for you. Maybe you're not qualified. Maybe you really don't, you're just irresponsible. Maybe no glyph will help you, because you're actually just so irresponsible you'll defy anything that could possibly lend you a hand. So what do you do about that? Would you suggest that a person actually give themselves a reading, have a reading, or is there some type of ritual or process that you would recommend that a person would say, well, fine, this is what I should do, because if I take these steps, most likely it will work?
Right. Well, as someone who does magic professionally, I like to, first of all, be I think one person that reviewed my work as a sorcerer, not as a writer, had mentioned that I was quote unquote pretty blunt, and I like that. So I will be, if I think that someone is, like in the case of the resume I mentioned earlier, I'm like, man, you don't need any more magic. You need me to rewrite your resume. If you want to pay me, a couple $100 to rework your resume for you, I'll do that. But no amount of magic is going to fix this. Then, yeah, I think it's my duty to inform people that, well, I can do the magic you are requesting. However, these are the obstacles that you're creating for yourself. And maybe there's something I can help you with as far as giving a reading or just a consultation. Some people will just call me up for a brainstorming session rather than a tarot reading where, I'm looking at, say, their business plan, and I'm like, I'll do a couple readings, but I'll also point out some things that are just completely obvious to me that, like, well, this isn't going to work, or your overhead here is too high, or no, it's not a good idea to open an occult store in the middle of the sticks where 9 other occult stores have failed. So, the need to tell people to get a clue is always there. Now, I like to offer options. People will come to me and they'll say, well, I would like this to happen. And I'll say, well, maybe this isn't going to happen, or the readings don't indicate, but perhaps a cleansing might help you, and I can offer you that. Or, well, this job spell will improve your chances, but you should do this, this, and this. Or I'll even offer levels of work. If I think that magic is really going to help, I'll say, well, here's a talisman or a mojo that costs $50 versus a ritual that goes on for 9 days, which is going to cost several $100s, and a few steps in between. And then also being sensitive, because people will come to me and say, I've been out of work for 2 years. The money is horrible. I can't, I can't put food on the table for my family. And I've been to 9 other sorcerers, all of whom have failed me, and I've spent countless of hundreds of dollars on them. And I'll say, okay, well, the first thing you need to do is stop spending hundreds of dollars on sorcery, because there's probably another thing here. So what I'll do in that case, and I've done this many times, is I'll say, well, you should immediately stop spending any more money. But I will do something for you, something in the range of like the $50 talisman, which is a powerful tool. But don't pay me for it yet. Pay me for it after you feel that it's worked, and that you actually, not just feel that it's worked, but you actually have money in the bank to pay for it that is not going to take away from food or rent or necessities. Because I feel very strongly that if people write to you and say, I am having a very difficult financial time and I'm about to lose my home, it's predatory to say, oh, well, for $900 I can, that's just predatory and wrong, and certainly not in keeping with my spiritual values. So I'll offer them a little something and say, well, pay me back. You can pay me for it after it works in this case. Now, if it's a love spell, then no, you have to pay me up front.
We've mentioned glyphs, you've mentioned talisman, and you've mentioned just, I guess, everyday maintenance of how they manage their finances. I was wondering, do you feel that there is a let's say, some type of coordinates between someone's birth date, their positioning of where they are, and it's that right time for them to actually, it's that phase, that cycle for them to actually go through to either go, be at a low level or mid or high? Because many people also consider, thinking, oh, well, it's not my time to win the lottery, or it's not my time to really, this time I'm just really like Mercury retrograde or the winter, the seasons, it's not my time now. It'll come. Or should they defy that, do you feel, and really go about the practicality, work with the spirituality, and use whatever talisman, use whatever glyphs, and whatever else that they want?
Well, we're breaking up a little bit, but if I understood the question, it's a matter of people who feel that there's a time and a place for things, and maybe it's not the time for them for the talisman to work or something like that.
Okay.
In those cases, I'm a little different than a lot of other sorcerers and magicians, and I tend not to think that the universe is clockwork, or that there's this predestined plan, or that I don't buy into the idea of, well, it's not in God's plan at this time, or that astrology says it'll always be poor, or something like that. I tend to view astrological aspects as things to be overcome, not dictates of fate. And as far as a plan, of God that's sort of micromanaged to the level of, well, you're only going to make $40,000 a year no matter what you do, I can't imagine a divinity like that. So I tend to take a look at the circumstance and advise people appropriately. Now, more often than not, it has to do with people's set point. People think in terms of, well, I would like to make $250,000 a year. But I was raised by lower middle class people who made $30,000 or $40,000 a year. All my friends are lower middle class people that make $30,000 or $40,000 a year. My entire, social structure is hinged around this, and ultimately I feel that's where I'm comfortable, where I belong, whether they admit this to themselves or not. This is how they think, and that can be very self-defeating. So you have to move your set point from thinking, this is what I come from, and this is where I'll be, and this is where my comfort zone is, into being uncomfortable. If you take somebody that, say, makes $40,000 a year, and they were raised by people that made the equivalent in their era of about $40,000 a year, they get, if something happens, they lose a job or something that kicks them back below that, they work feverishly to get back to the $40,000 a year mark. They feel that something is not right, so they get back to that place, and they tend to do it pretty quickly. Mm. But to get beyond there, to work to improve their lot, to build a better life for themselves and their family and their children and so on, it's not as pressing, because it's actually uncomfortable. They're moving beyond their comfort zone in the opposite direction, but it's still out of their comfort zone. They're not used to dealing with those kinds of things. But it has nothing to do with you being destined to make that certain amount. It's purely psychology and your set point, where you feel. Because if you take somebody that was raised by an upper middle class family, where everyone is a doctor, a lawyer, or a banker, and you're a doctor, a lawyer, or a banker, but you're, say, the type of law you practice just disappears overnight or something like that, and you find yourself making $50,000 a year, you work at a feverish pace to get back up to your comfort zone. Yes. Your comfort zone just happens to be higher. And you see this on the lower end of the spectrum too, where people are living well below the poverty line or at the poverty line. And when they move above it, they sabotage themselves. 75% of people that do win millions of dollars in the lottery are broke within 7 years because it's outside their comfort zone.
Yes.
People that are, they're coming up in sort of a bad neighborhood where everybody's just sort of, poor or so on, and they want to go to college. They get made fun of. They get tortured in high school. You think you're better than me? You're trying to put on airs and you're better than us? Who are you? Well, I'm just trying to make something of myself. And that, again, is the set point. That person's success or desire even to have greater success financially is a threat. So a lot of it boils down to that set point. And people feel like it's not the right time, the spell didn't work, it must not be my karma. I don't buy it. Try something else. People write to me all the time and say, well, I have a poor aspect with Jupiter, so therefore I cannot work money magic. Well, it's ridiculous. It's just insane. Money magic can be worked with any of the planets. The sun is a big money planet. The huge ideas that you have for your side business are generated by the sun. The movement of money, the actual making money out of money by its skilled circulation is a Mercurial function, not a Jupiterian function. The making of money by sort of just fierce determination is a martial aspect. Becoming an aggressive person, not aggressive, but assertive at your work. Or making money through, I don't know, becoming a Blackwater guard or something. That's a martial function. The discipline aspect of it, to sit down and say, well, you know what, my mind has been everywhere, all over the place, I need to focus. The discipline comes from Saturn. The timing can come from the moon, and all the planets. It can be tuned to all the functions of life.
Right.
So when people say, oh, bad Jupiter, even if I did believe it was bad Jupiter, it's an obstacle. How do you overcome the obstacle?
Indeed.
I don't buy a lot of excuses when it comes to that kind of thing.
Well, that's
God
good.
does not want you to be poor.
Yeah. I mean, you leave no excuses, and that's great. Because you mentioned something. One of the last chapters, you mentioned something about just being independent and to keep it going. Be financially independent. Have that wealth to continue, and you cannot have that continue if you're always worried about, oh, this planet is not good for me. Oh, this planet is in retro at the moment, or this is my cycle, or this is my karma. It has to work for you, and you put that, very straight to the point in the book. And what I really loved about this book was you actually touched, just like your friend said, you touched it, you went to the actual source about, damn it, if you don't have a good resume, you're not gonna, I don't care what type of magic you've got, you may get your foot in the door, but you may be kicked right back out. So it's about, sustaining what you want in magic. It's not so much about getting through the door. It's about actually making sure that it stays with you. It's not a quick fix. And that's something I really do love about how you've actually put it, because it's about a way of life that you're trying to get through to everyone. And I think it's very apparent. I really do. You've got some very, very, let's just say, intense courses that you offer. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, the main course offering right now is called the Strategic Sorcery course. And this is, I decided to put together a 52-week, a year-long course that would be extremely information dense and would give people, um, for lack of a better word, the largest bang for their buck possible. And I feel good about that because people write me all the time and they say, you know, well, I can't keep up week to week. And they said, well, that's okay. You have 5 years to do all the homework and get your certificate. And even then, you still have the course. So, you know, even if you don't get a certificate, you have all the information at your hand to work through it at your own pace. And it is a work at your own pace course because I learned by working at my own pace. And I learned by jumping around at things. I didn't stick to anyone's timetable. But the Strategic Sorcery course is designed to work for anyone who, and it is, to my knowledge, is the only course that presents a system of magic that assumes you're also practicing other systems of magic. So it assumes that you come to me with a background maybe in Wicca, maybe in ceremonial magic, maybe in Afro-Caribbean tradition. It doesn't rely upon that background, but it doesn't assume that you're going to be doing only my course. And I think most systems of training assume that you're just doing nothing but that training all day. And that's, I think, a mistake in the modern era. So the Strategic Sorcery is applicable to just about any path. And you know, for $150, it's less than $3 a lesson. And I get field reports, both as homeworks and also just students writing in and saying, you know, I accomplished this. And it's been by far the best thing I've ever, outside of creating kids and getting married, the best thing I've ever done in my life as far as magic, because I've had students that far surpassed me in many ways as far as their accomplishments. I mean, I've had people, in the first cycle, someone had written and said, you know, my goal, I make everyone state a specific attainable goal, is to open up an Irish pub. And, you know, I have no idea how I'm really going to do this, but I know Strategic Sorcery is going to help me. That pub was opened before she was even 3/4 of the way through the course. And she, you know, there are sigils from the course that are up in the bar.
Oh, wow.
And that are attracting people. And I got to meet with her recently at the Between the Worlds convention in Delaware, and I mean, my heart soared just hearing the success that she's having with this. And other people, you know, I have people that started off the course with, you know, they needed a payment plan to put down the 150. And by the end of the course, they're successful traders. You know, one person became a project manager who now works from home, making well into the 6 figures. So, you know, there are people who started off the course thinking that they're very sort of homely and shy people, and that the types of people that they desired are out of their league, who, you know, have turned around and now found people that they never thought would take interest in them through magic, but mostly through changes in the self. So that's the Strategic Sorcery courses.
That sounds incredible, but you know what? A lot of the things that you do seem, you know, especially through the financial sorcery, it seems like there's a lot of attraction going in there. You know, there's a lot of attraction going on because it appears that there's a lot of attraction in between that which you want. That's just very magnetic. I mean, from people in your sorcery class, or I'm sorry, your strategic class, to you know, your financial sorcery. Would you say that financial sorcery is very close to attraction magic?
It is. It is. It is. Well, I mean, one can say almost any kind of practical magic is a branch of And I mean, how many words for magic have become commonplace words in English
Yes.
for physical attraction? I am spellbound by you. find you enchanting. I'm ensorcelled by your beauty, and so on and so forth. All of these are words that refer to the occult and to magic, and essentially mean falling head over heels. So yeah, there is that vibe. You know, there are also people who their goal in the course is to successfully astral project, and
Oh, I
I
see.
have several lessons on that. Who accomplish those kinds of goals. But yeah, I'd say I drive home a very practical, results oriented approach, and that requires some attraction magic.
Okay.
In when I was in Nepal, one of my main avenues of study was the goddess Kurukula, who's the goddess of attraction. So
Hmm.
she's a huge patron of mine, I guess you would say.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah, I like for people to be able to magnetize things around them.
Well, definitely, I can say that people will find that magnetism if they just follow some of the simple rules that will cause them to look at themselves and work the magic, or let's say work the sorcery within them, and outside, of course, inside, outside. But I want to thank you for being on this show. It's been a great pleasure because this book was quite enjoyable. I love the artwork again. The first book that I interviewed you on, the artwork was really nice too. The tattoo artist had done that one. And
Yeah.
this one, who actually did the actual artwork?
Well, Matthew Brownlee did all the artwork in this book, and in The Sorcerer's Secrets, he did all the artwork in that book as well. My first book, Protection and Reversal Magic, that was all me, which is why it's all sketchy looking, and some of it, the publisher had their artist clean it up a little bit.
I see.
And then other things just went in as my hand drawings. But Matthew Brownlee he's a professional tattoo artist, and he is an old friend of mine. I've known him since we were 15 years old, and I'm now 40, so that's a 25-year friendship. And we were roommates at one time. We had an OTO camp run out of our apartment at one
Wow.
time. So, there's a lot of camaraderie there, and Matt is a very, very talented artist. And if anyone watching this, you can go to my website and find him. And if you want him to design a sigil for you or something like that, he taps right into the power directly. So when people look at the glyphs and the planetary seals from this and the last book, like the planetary seal of Jupiter that's on this book, he doesn't do this on a graph or use the kamiyas or something like that. He feels that power and transmits it to paper directly. He's got this talent for taking a multi-dimensional thing and drawing it from 5 dimensions down to 2 and putting it on paper. It's amazing.
Well, I tell you, together you two work perfectly well. I mean, I just thought to myself, I said, he did it again, because most times you don't see it again and again. But the artwork looks good, the content is excellent, and I just want to congratulate you. I enjoyed the book very much, and I've, I let my best friend read it, and she was just amazed about the information. So thank you for putting this out in the market. Thanks.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Yes, well, that's it about now. I just want to thank you for taking your time, and it's been great. It's been wonderful having you, and I'd love to have you back on your next book. Whatever book that's going to be.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you.